based on what they're doing, I would have approved 100% for 5 years.
That's what they asked
So,
for.
Huh?
That's what they asked for.
airport meetings when I first started going.
Okay.
Been very vocal.
Yeah,
No, they didn't, yeah, they didn't ask for more.
yeah, well, I mean,
This guy
in my
Good.
opinion, they should have asked for more, but that's all right,
shows up right here.
unless I'm missing
you.
something.
But he,
I
evicted.
think they're looking for a reasonable amount that, to
Yeah,
get the
So you need to find me.
same thing HI does. I mean, they'll ask for more than
I
the
know no
basic
place
usually.
that's gonna pay your mortgage.
yeah,
Right.
okay, well,
And it's a brand
Thank
new
you.
facility.
yeah. But don't they use the assessed valuation of
Do
the
you have
previous
that?
one they tear down?
Time,
Said 1 minute.
So it's the
you,
difference
this,
between what they put in and what was there originally,
our guest for tonight.
as the original as a baseline.
I was so wrong.
I think that's the way it's supposed to be.
It says on here.
Way more than that.
I didn't read that
Yeah.
part.
But
I
this
made
is his
assumptions.
The minimum assessed value is listed in there,
Okay.
estimated.
Yeah, here it says goal setting session, 5:30.
This, I know. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the in-depth City Council meeting for November 8th in Muscatine, Iowa. Thank you all for coming. Cinda, will you please do the roll call?
Councilmember Spread,
Present.
Harvey,
Present.
Brockert,
Present.
Saucedo,
Present.
Brackett,
Present.
Fitzgerald,
Present.
Malcolm. 6 present, 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you. Since tonight's our in-depth meeting, we dispense with some of our formalities and move right along with the agenda. And we have decided that we aren't ready for number 3, so please disregard that, and we're going to move on to number 4. We have a request to approve the Iowa Department of Transportation's mutual benefit sales lease.
So moved.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Spread with a second by Councilman Fitzgerald. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Greg, would you kind of tell us what the purpose of the lease is, I guess?
Staff is anxious to get on the site. They haven't been on the site, other than myself, Steve Boca, and Randy Hill. During the sale process, nobody was allowed on the site. What this allows us to do is utilize the site between that 4 to 6 week period where the paperwork is being processed. I know Public Works would like to have access to the salt brine piece in the back. This will also allow them to get in and start taking a look at the site and evaluating its use. There's 3 maintenance bays, the 2 wash bays in the back, and basically allows us on the site to be able to start utilizing the property. It's at no cost to the city other than the cost to insure it a few weeks early.
So this allows us to get on until the
Until-
paperwork is finished for the purchase.
That's correct.
Like an early possession of some sort?
Simply, that's all it is.
Okay.
Anything else, Councilman? Hearing nothing else, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. Next, we have a request to approve the Iowa Department of Natural Resources consent order. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Fitzgerald with a second by Councilman Brackett. Is there any discussion on this item?
Information was pretty clear.
Hearing nothing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The request is approved with all ayes. Next, we have a presentation on the Kent TIF request, and I'm assuming that's you, Rich Dwyer. Please come to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Appreciate that. Rich Dwyer at 3407 Claremont Drive in Muscatine here. Work for Kent Corporation. And this evening would like to give you a little background, but Kent is looking at the potential to basically increase our office space. We're at a point in time where the facility, we actually moved in there about 6 years ago. And business continues and where we have that pretty well filled at this point. Along with that, we recently, as much as back in May, acquired the hotel property that sits next to us. So we're looking at some things of how we can do things to expand our office capacity. And so with that, we kind of evaluate, and we're still in the middle of evaluating the possibility of converting the hotel or the possibility of actually building and starting over with another building. Decision's not been made as of yet, still looking at the financial side of things at this point. Along with that, with the hotel, in the meantime, since May, we have actually been working to donate a lot of the equipment that was in the hotel, the beds, the chairs, the couches, tables, pretty much a lot of those went to a number of places, especially around town here. We donated hundreds of items to MCSA, MCC, Rebuilding Together, Receive Products, the Jesus Mission, Habitat for Humanity had some products, Muscatine County Fair took a number of products, Goodwill, as well as many others that we actually were donating. Also, we recently here announced the moving of one of our business units, which is Kent Precision Foods Group, that we announced that we're going to move that headquarters to Muscatine. That will amount to about 35 positions that will be coming to Muscatine. Don't know how many of those people will actually make the move, but we're going to fill those positions in Muscatine. So we'll continue to look, trying to hire those people as best we can.
You say move, where are they coming from?
For the most part, St. Louis is where the headquarters has been for about the past 20, 25 years. And so they'll be coming up from the St. Louis area if we can get those to move. Don't anticipate a lot, but we'll see how that works out. And so we are actually starting to go through the hiring process for some of the other positions. We already know it's available. These are high quality type jobs where there'll be marketing, sales positions. We'll have some finance people that will take these positions. So it's more that support that we'll have in these roles that we'll be moving to Muscatine. We also had, some may have heard, but we have leased the Laurel building as far as the 4th floor, to where that's where we're going to temporarily, hopefully, house them for a while. We've been leasing in St. Louis for this number of years, so leasing here we're fine with, and it fits us very well to utilize that space. So in the meantime, that's kind of what our plans are to bring those people in. So that brings us where additional office space will not only help house those people, but we're also looking for long-term growth and making sure that what we do to this facility that we're planning for the future. When we moved into the facility, we planned out what it would look like for roughly 10 to 15 years out and what the growth might look like, and that's how we try to forecast. We're off a little bit to where we maxed it out about 6 years later. So that's why we're here talking a little bit as far as our next steps. So that's kind of the thought process, what we're looking at trying to do, not only for these positions, but future growth. So with that, would like to ask of the City Council a consent agreement from your folks as far as to provide a tax increment finance program to Kent for the future office expansion at the 2905 Highway 61 North. We're asking for 75% for the first 4 years, and then after that, 50% for the next 6 years for a 10-year TIF. At this point, we don't have a whole lot of information to show or even designs. We're not that far along yet. We're still discussions with the constructions and architects to try to see what that looks like. We're evaluating the full size it's going to be. We got rough ideas, but not quite having that nailed down yet, and trying to put all the package together. So looking for the consent agreement currently, with the idea we'll come back as we have additional information. I'll open up for any questions.
Councilman.
If you were to rebuild or even demolish and build new, when are you anticipating, in early spring of 2018 or?
We're anticipating if we did that process, it'd probably be a 2-year before we get to move in. By the time we get through the design work and constructions, tear down, construction, the whole works, if we went that route. So we're probably looking closer to the 2020 at this point is kind of our estimate, if everything lines up.
For either option?
Probably for either option.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yes, Your Honor. Rich, are any of the materials in the hotel, should you decide to demolish it, are any of them recyclable so that we aren't having to take all of that to the landfill?
You bet. No, appreciate the question. Yes, we're actually, not even the furniture, we're definitely got that covered. We're also looking at all the carpet will be recycled. We've got a firm that we're working with to try to recycle all the carpet that we can. All the ceiling tiles will be recycled. The steel will be recycled. We're going to look at every angle we can to try to recycle as much as we can so it doesn't go to the landfill. Of course, we're still going to have a lot of the concrete and some of that, but if we can find homes for filling in ravines or anything like that, who knows? But we definitely want to get that taken care of as far as recycling as much as we can.
Okay, thank you.
So are you
Councilman Sasse.
pursuing LEED certification?
We will not go to a LEED certification as the current facility is not.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense for us to go that route.
Councilman Saucedo.
Do you know how old the place is?
I'm not quite sure on the hotel side. I'm not quite sure. I know our building's in the 80s, and I'm assuming that's about the same time the hotel was.
It's more like
Early 80s,
74.
70s then, early 70s. Okay, yeah,
I was just wondering when the asbestos cutoff was.
right. We've had to gone through it and checked that there wasn't much at all for asbestos in the facility.
Good.
So yeah, so that was a benefit that we did studies.
Sure. Council, anything else? Councilman Harvey?
I'm just being funny now, but could you recycle the pool?
We drained the pool.
You drained it, okay.
We definitely drained it and haven't recycled it at this point. Yeah,
Might be a place you can put the concrete.
might be, absolutely, yes.
Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, I'm glad to see something happening with the hotel, because I was concerned about what that was gonna become, given the direction it had been going when it was still operating as a hotel, and excited to see you bring in the jobs here from St. Louis as well. So I like this plan.
No, appreciate that. Yep.
Good.
Yeah, nothing at this time.
Okay.
I've had conversation with him earlier today. so-
Yes.
You bet.
Well, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
So, Your Honor, I assume there's a consensus to move forward with the next steps?
Sounded like it,
Any
yes.
major changes, we'll
Just
obviously bring that back.
Go ahead.
My only thing was just that the assumptions on this form are stating in FY19. So that's why I was wondering if it needs to be stated in FY20, if that's the case.
It would, depending on when the agreement's signed and the terms and conditions of the agreement, I mean, we'll be working on bringing that forward when they're ready and have the finalized numbers. Now, we indicated if the numbers changed drastically, we'd obviously bring that back to council, so, but
But I'm only suggesting,
for the
right here, we're
spreadsheet,
putting the assumptions of FY19 as the tax rate for all the years. And that's what, if it's actually 20 when we start,
Right.
then that would be different. Then they would be getting another year
Yep.
of no construction or, that's all I was getting at.
the agreement will take into consideration the term, when it begins, and it'll also typically have a provision that they can extend it a year if things were delayed. So all of those will be factored in. This is simply for our purposes based on the current tax rate, so it really depend, the agreement is what will dictate the final
And
terms
it'll
and
start,
conditions.
if it's 10 years, it'll start
Right.
from that year.
That's what,
fine.
that's what it'll
Okay.
start.
That's fine.
That's what dictates the terms and conditions.
And I also added on the second sheet, the spreadsheet, that trying to put a range of what the cost structure is. We just don't know where that's at.
Sure.
It's kind of hoping we had a rough idea, but we don't yet. So we were kind of just picking a middle of the road number that we can, at least for a, the idea of where we're at right now.
Sure.
And we'll have more information as we get the architect work laid out.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Next, we have a presentation and discussion on the high-strength waste project. John, will you lead that for us?
Good evening, John Cook, Director of your Water and Resource Recovery Facility, striving every day to live up to our namesake. I won't say we hit a roadblock here, but I think we'd actually had a stroke of luck come our way. We actually did get bids in for this project we've been working on. We redid it, made it bigger, made it better, and the bids came in, and it was a $3 million project with bids coming in about $4.3 to $5 million. So we were kind of off our mark on that a little bit. We had 4 good bidders, though. They were all qualified contractors, and it looked like it represented the work to be done. So we went back and started looking for some places possibly where we could save money. on the project. We got about $500,000 out of it, and the functionality of the project just kept getting lower and lower and lower as we tried to cull things out of it. So that's not the way we want to go about that. So we kind of started thinking about it. Actually, David Pop from the transfer station ran into me right outside the doors here, and he says, "Have you ever considered using the recycling center for this thing?" I said, "Well, isn't that full of recyclables?" And he's like, "No, it hasn't been full for years, because last time I checked, it was full of recyclables. I hadn't really been there exploring that at all." And he says, "No, it really isn't." So I said, "Well, shoot, let's go take a look at it." And, you know, it's where the solid waste goes anyway. This is where we're talking about putting the separator. So solid waste goes there. It's built to have trucks driving in and out of it all the time. The trash that we're going to generate from the separator would just basically go across the hall. I mean, it's not a trip down from anywhere else like that. So we're really looking into that, and it looks like it's going to be something that would work out absolutely perfectly for us. I hope. Recycling, the Republic has a lease on it until June of next year. So as work's going on, we can work that out. They can use it. You know, I don't think we'll have any issues with that. We talk to them about it and figure out how to make arrangements to work around them as well. So that's going to work out, I hope. You know, the recycling center has 3 truck bays, just like we were going to build. It's taller ceilings, natural gas, water, electric, everything is already there. We'll probably have to put some drainage in, but everything is kind of it just seemed to line up perfectly. And you're going to say, "Why didn't you think of that sooner?" Well, we thought about being down there. We thought about building a building down there, because last time I checked, it was full of recyclables. Now it's not. That whole thing has just kind of shifted away in a different direction to my advantage, and I'm actually pretty happy about that. So we think we can take the tankers that we already own and load those up with the material that we separate out, and then with water, fill in the tankers and just drive it down the street. You know, we're like a couple blocks away, and that's a pretty easy way for us to go, so we don't have to pump, we don't have to run pipe, we don't have to do any of that kind of stuff. Seems like a pretty elegant little way to do what we've been trying to do for so long. Some work would have to be done, of course, in the building, put some drainage things in, run the wiring, do some lighting. I mean, the building has kind of been abandoned for the most part, left alone, so there will be some work to be done there, but it should be rather easy to do, I think. We'll ask him how easy it is to do later if you want, my engineers. So the separation equipment will go there. We keep the liquid receiving down at the wastewater plant, because that's the stuff that you have to pump, and that's the stuff that comes in at 5,000 to 6,000 gallons at a time. So you want to be moving that stuff back and forth that way. So keep that as close as we can, keep it as local as we can, and do the work down at the plant. You know, we should be able to even do this quicker, because if you don't have to build and put the foundation in and dig a hole and do all that stuff that would probably not get done this winter, everything's done for us basically. So they can do all the indoor work this winter. I would imagine by the spring we could be really rocking and rolling. Liquid waste might be a little further behind, but I think the solid separation can start right away, start immediately. So that's a good thing on that side too. You know, the traffic out there is designed for this. That was kind of always the problem that I was having with it. The way that we changed it, it dumped all the traffic from these trucks right back into the entrance of the resource recovery facility, which I didn't really like, but I was willing to accept. But now I don't have to deal with that. The traffic is designed to do what it does out at the transfer station, so that's a good thing as well. So, with all that being said, if council is supportive, what we're going to do is we're going to reject all the bids next Thursday. That's why I'm here tonight, to tell you that before I just come up and say this all next week. We're going to reject the bids. We'll proceed quickly with some planning, designing for modifications to the recycling center, revisions to what we have to do at the treatment plant, and then work to bid the revised plans sometime in January probably. So first step will be a revision to the engineering contract, which means we'll have to get a little bit more in engineering, and I know that's not where we want to do that, but that's what we got to do. We have to make sure we have this ready to go, and I know all the steps that we've made along the way have built to this point, so we're not starting from scratch. So all the things that we have spent money on engineering, all the things we built, all we have to do is kind of take those components and fit them to this new piece. So we're not really starting all over again. So just wanted to let everybody know that will be coming next week to do that and get your approval for that, and give you the opportunity to ask any questions and talk to me and send emails or whatever else you want to do before that happens. So,
Anybody have any questions now for John? Appreciate you always thinking outside of the box.
well,
You always do. Anyone?
Yeah, I have a few questions.
Go ahead.
So we're gonna use the building that's basically the recycle that Republic uses now.
right.
And right now, what do they put in there?
Cardboard,
Okay.
big piles of cardboard right in the middle of the building. That's all they do.
Which is recyclables from our community?
Yeah, I assume it's coming from
Okay.
somebody. Yeah, they have anybody that has just plain cardboard recycling bins. They gather that there, they throw it on the floor, and then they grab it with this thing and they shove it in the back of a truck, and then they drive it up to Davenport.
Square footage wise, the space that you're wanting to get from the transfer station is what size?
The building is like 168 by 80, 70, 168 by 70, and David would like to retain about 80 square feet of that, so that in the future, if he wants to do other recycling or to do other things, so basically it's like half the building that he can keep, and that's fine. We don't need a 168-foot long building to do what we do.
Of the $4.5 million that you said that was quoted as far as the potentials, that's them already building, in a sense, a building to fit your solid waste separation?
You mean the bid that came in?
Yes.
Yeah, the bid was for the building and everything.
And then everything else.
But except the
So-
separator. That didn't even include the separator machine, which is another $350,000 some dollars.
So hypothetically, if we were to state, and this may be more for the engineer, if we were to reuse our building that we have now, utilize what you have, modify what we do, what would be the potential savings that we would have of the 4.5 million?
I was told not to talk numbers yet. Because I'm maybe more optimistic than others, so I'd hate to give a number.
Well,
but you
that's,
got
that's what I'm saying. It may be a question more for him, but I look
Yeah.
at it, and you're saying a 168 by 70 building, steel structured, electric, water. You're probably going to still need to do exhaust. You're probably going to change the lighting. You may have to do some concrete work inside. But I'm looking at, you're probably saving yourself $1 million. But that's me. I'd like to hear it from him.
I think that's a fair assessment, that, you know, the savings going there is probably over $1 million. And I think the benefit of this plan is because the revenue stream, the big revenue stream is that separator equipment to start with. So if we can order that equipment and get it installed over there for a relatively low cost and get going and start getting that revenue in, that's just going to make this program go. And we can build some flexibility into the bidding documents for like the liquid receiving part of it, because there's going to be quite a bit smaller building, about 15% of what the original building was envisioned at the plant. So that that smaller building we could almost put in like as an alternate. So if our budget isn't matching up, then we could delay that or defer that. But the hope would be that we could fit it all within the program budget.
The program, okay. That's all I have.
Anything else for tonight?
No.
Thank you. Thank you both. Well, the last thing we have on tonight's agenda is a discussion of the draft resolution on the ATE ordinance changes. Are you going to do that, Nancy?
No, I think Phil and I will do that.
Okay.
Phil, if you want to make your way up.
Send it to me, Nancy.
Matt's helped us craft a nice summary here, or excuse me, Mike Heilman at Brick Gentry. And we've had numerous discussions with Brett, Phil, Nancy, and myself. And in a nutshell, we're reversing our current ordinance is essentially what we're doing. In having to utilize the municipal infraction process after 30 days. So what we're being asked to do is based on the court decision, is is increase those upfront fees, because if we don't do that and we go to the court, they will not enforce the correct amount, the higher amount at that point in time. So what we're doing is reversing the fee structure. So if you pay in a timely fashion, you pay in the 30 days, you will pay the normal fine that you pay today. If you don't, you'll pay the normal fine that you pay at the end of the collection process today. So really, while it appears that a lot is changing, at the end of the day, the fee structure essentially remains the same, but it is reversed. Because if we don't do that and start the collection process, the municipal infraction process in 30 days, when it goes to the court, at that point in time, they would be enforcing the lower fine and not the correct amount, which is comparable with the fines today. So that's it in a very short nutshell. And the only reason that we're doing this is because of the court case that's cited here at the top of the page. And I don't know, based that they really understand the amount of work that they've created for the court systems across the state of Iowa by doing this, and an already overcrowded court system. And then two, we don't know the exact amount of work, additional work that's going to be created at the staff level by having to do this. And then at the end of the court process, there will be a collection process. So this will be a learning period. But to be clear, we're not asking the city council to adopt an ordinance that is going to change the revenue. Well, it's going to change the structure, but it's not going to change what's collected at the end of the day. So if you pay your fine on time, you would pay what you would normally pay today. If you pay late, you will pay what you normally paid late today. It's just in reverse. So, Phil, you have anything to add?
The Iowa Supreme Court forced our hand with this, and typically what would happen under the prior ordinance is after the first 30 days, if someone did not pay or did not request being transferred to court or an administrative review, a $35 late fee would be added on top, kind of like if you don't pay your credit card bill or the bills that you normally have. They would still have the ability to transfer it to court. But if they don't pay it, you'd have 25% fee that the collections company would add on top of that. That was not taken out of what the city would get from that fine. So this is kind of a building block of all the different fees or costs that would be incurred by someone that was found liable at the end of it going to court, or even if it goes to collections and they don't pay it, and it goes to the offset program, and then the money is collected that way. There's hearings along the whole way and due process and everything. But this is taking it where after if you say 30 days in the ordinance, or if you say after 45 days, city council can set what time frame that is that they have to pay or decide to go to court. During that time, in those first 30 days or 45 days, whichever you choose, they could still ask to have an administrative review with myself or the captain like they could do now. Or they can just wait and it'll get transferred to court. Before, this did not get transferred to court. This would go through the normal process that case law had already established for municipal infractions, to where you could say, if you didn't do this, you don't do this, you don't do this, okay. Everything's done and said, this is where it's going now. It goes to collections and it goes to the offset. Now we are going to have to write out municipal infractions for everyone that does not pay. That means that instead of people just ignoring it, they're going to have to go to court. If they ignore it then they're found liable. But we still have to collect the fines through collections. It's not like a traffic citation where the court and the state go after you because you owe that fine.
We already do this in our ordinance on a smaller scale for parking fines. So, you know, it's that if you don't pay that fine within a certain time period, it goes up. So we already do a similar process on a much lower scale. it's really just everything that we're currently doing now, but in reverse, from a fine perspective. So,
And if they decide they want to go to court within those first 30 days, then it gets transferred to court. And like anything else, all those other fees then aren't necessarily added on top. This is if they don't pay, if they don't do anything with it, they don't contact us, we have to send it to court. So that just,
as a municipal infraction.
as a municipal infraction, it has to be sent certified mail or delivered in person. And this is just covering all those other fees that would happen. If they come to us and say, we want to transfer it to court because we don't like this, just like we do now, we would send it to court and then it would go through the court process that way.
Does anybody have any questions?
Is there any other cities that have done this?
The other two cities that our attorneys have been in contact with are Cedar Rapids and Des Moines.
They have a similar system like this?
I'm sorry?
They have a similar program that they're setting up like this?
I think we're all been talking about how to proceed in a similar fashion. I don't know that they've started their process yet, or when they will, but this is the process that we've all been discussing.
Greg, how
There doesn't seem, I'm sorry, there doesn't seem to be a different route that they can come up with in order to accomplish the same, the same results. And our goal was not to change the fine structure. And we wanted to make sure that we allowed for an opportunity for those that would normally pay to have the same fine structure that they're paying today.
This was born out of discussion by all the attorneys for the different agencies or cities or government entities. And this is what we were advised that the discussion had surrounded around.
I just struggle with the increase. I mean,
It's not an
It's
increase.
not an increase.
well, if you pay within 30 days, correct?
No, if you request to go to court within 30 days, if you do not pay it and you'd let it go, these fees were exactly what they would incur.
Before.
Yes.
Right now,
Okay.
or
What would
presently in the
happen is
current
within
ordinance.
30 days, if they didn't pay, a $35 late fee would be added. After a total of 60 days, then it would go to collections. So over that time frame, all these fees are adding into what you're seeing in paper right there.
This is what they're paying today. So it's really not an increase. It's just showing in reverse. The ordinance doesn't, it's just showing in reverse. And they're given a time frame to pay the lower amount without it going to a municipal infraction into the court. There's no change in the fee structure, essentially.
The increase in the fee is basically what you would see people who ignore their notices, ignore taking it to court, ignore doing anything with it.
And I, after reading through it, I mean, before I came in tonight, I had reviewed it quite a bit, and I don't see a problem with this. I don't like the cameras. I mean, if we were voting to get rid of the cameras, that's the direction I'd go. But I don't see this changing the overall structure of what's there. So I don't have an issue with it. And it makes sense as far as the way the law changed. I mean,
We tried to keep it as close as possible to the
Right.
current structure following the current laws.
yeah,
This is gonna have a significant impact on the court system.
yeah,
And
it's already
down
underfunded,
the
so.
road, maybe after I
Maybe it was
retire, but
intentional,
it may not. I think you'll see maybe some legislative action on this decision by the Iowa Supreme Court. But until that happens, this is kind of what we're stuck with from what the Supreme Court decided.
And we really need a method to move forward at this point in time, so that's what we're wanted to bring forward tonight, so we can get the process started next week.
Yeah,
So when I'm gonna read a paragraph, and it says, "The cost and increases appear to be a form of increased service cost, court cost, staff time, and collections. In the event of municipal infraction, the city has reviewed an estimated cost to the city of each of these categories. Given our estimation, this is the recommended increasing the civil penalty as follows. So was it an estimate that we did, or when you say that there isn't an increase, that's where I'm confused?
These are exact same costs that there are today. There's a $10 fee for mailing.
The estimate comes in is because there was rounding done, so it isn't, the collections fee is a 25% fee. So
Okay.
25% doesn't come out to a specific dollar amount, it comes out to a specific dollar amount, excuse me, but it has cents to it, so things were rounded.
Okay, so it wasn't something, okay. It just, initially, when you look at it, it almost looks like they're doubled, and that's where I'm hesitant.
On the language
and
where
what
they
we-
use the word increase.
We were very conservative in that we don't know exactly what all of the costs would be, who's gonna pay up front, who's gonna require that we go through the process, so we were very conservative in
I
the
think
numbers.
the big piece for me is that it clearly states in this, and this is what I do like, is that as long as somebody pays within 30 days, nothing changes.
Right.
Right.
And if that's the case, then I feel comfortable with that aspect of it, and from what you're stating, it's just so much of it was crossed out, and then reading through it, and then doubling it, that's what,
Then there again, Councilman,
Concerns me.
the decision whether it's 30 days, 45 days, 15 days, 35 days, that's something that, on your input, that could change.
Yeah, well, I would be
The-
more comfortable with 45 than 30, personally, just looking at the way that people get, paid and things like that.
If some people only get paid once a month, perhaps it just
Yeah.
missed
But
their
you're also
payday.
gonna run into, the other thing to keep in mind is just like the reason they have credit cards on a 30 days, you're gonna have, every credit card company has kind of that gray area where the check or the payment may come in 35 days or 34. The longer you make it out, the longer that gray area is gonna be, and then
Right.
where do we just say, okay, niceness stops? With 30 days, if you get up to 35, maybe even 40 days, say, okay, well, the check was in the mail, because we run into that a lot with even when people pay it, the GATSO will get it and they'll process it, it'll be late. Well, we'll call them and say, okay, forget the late fee, it was within 7, 8 days from that 30 days.
Right, but with this, doesn't it go to court once it hits the 30-day point?
There's nothing automatic, we have to fill out the document.
Okay,
So and I can almost guarantee you just by the sheer volume, that at that 30-day mark, we're not gonna be writing that citation out at that time. It's there,
but you
we
could,
We
Yeah.
could.
right,
You may start writing them out, but
It's just a matter of when they get filed with the court system too.
right,
Because just because we write them out doesn't mean that they get filed right away.
yeah.
all right. I'm good.
Anybody else have any thoughts on the 30 to 45 days?
Keep it 30.
I'm good with keeping it 30. If we're consistent with what we have, I don't feel like we need to
Councilman
change it.
Harvey?
Greg, I just back up a little bit, so maybe the people that are listening to the program, the Supreme Court really didn't decide specifically about the ATE cameras. They started to address how the fines are collected. Is that correct?
And this is from, you'll note, this is not, there was a previous case on ATEs, and then there was this case that came up as well, which we were not a part of. And in this case, they avoided the discussion or anything related to the lawfulness of ATEs and strictly stuck with the methodology of the fine structure.
So what we're doing now, we're doing it really because the court said this is what we have to do?
Well, I mean, they didn't spell it out. This is the 3 cities or the attorney's best interpretation of the Supreme Court's decision on how best to address it. As Phil said, the legislative process could certainly change that. But basically, we've had a lot of discussion, and I think we were all in agreement. Do we like it? No, because we think it's going to create more staff time, but we think this is the, I guess, the fairest way to move forward based on attorney's recommendation.
Now, if the the initial fine is not, or paid within the first 30 days, and and it used to go to the court, but now we have to initiate the court. Why would either way burden the court system any more than it did?
Because now you're gonna be throwing X number of municipal infractions into the court system that were not there before. Instead, they were going through the collections process, which is outside of the courts. So now those will all be going to and through the court system as a municipal infraction. We did not write a municipal infraction before. It simply went through the collections process and stayed out of the court system unless they chose to take it to court.
And so now it's forced to go to court simply
Yes.
because that's the way the Supreme Court.
It's forced to go to court because
Okay.
we're required to issue it as a municipal infraction.
I have a
so
question then.
It's their idea, not ours, to
Yes.
do it. Okay.
So if, in this particular case, if they don't pay it within 30 days, then does it, and it goes to court and they lose, assuming they will, then does that go on their criminal record and their driving record?
No.
As it would if it was a...
It will be noted in Iowa Courts Online like everything that goes through the court system is. It does not go on their driving record, and it does not affect insurance.
Okay,
It's not a criminal, it's still not a criminal
Still a civil
infraction. or
matter.
okay.
But it will be, everything that goes through the court system is listed in Iowa Courts Online. There's, since they've gone to everything electronic, there's no getting around that.
Okay.
There's nothing going to there.
It's just like any other municipal infraction that we issue for nuisance abatement or whatever it might be.
I just, that was what I thought initially, but
Yes.
then with the way it was being phrased, I
Yeah,
wasn't
No,
sure.
no.
So, I mean, I'd still lean towards 45 days just based on the fact that, you know, if you're somebody that has extremely low income and you get once a month, you know, paid once a month or whatever, and you hit that spot, you're gonna end up with the higher fine no matter what, basically, if you get, you know, if you're in that, and that's just gonna
We've already been
compound the
working,
issue, so.
we've already worked with a lot of people over the years that are in that situation where they say, I can't pay here, but I can pay by here.
Okay,
And we extend the date in the
Okay.
system before anything is generated by doing that. But it still requires them to initiate contact with us and,
Okay.
and talk to us.
well, if you've got that
there's-
in place, and if you've been doing that, then that gives me more comfort on just leaving it at 30. But, you know, if people know, you know, as long as people know that and don't just out of, out of misunderstanding, ignore it, not out of obstinance, then, you know, so. Hopefully that detail, maybe I'll hit the discussion in the paper.
Sounds like a personal problem to me.
But you've got people in a hard spot,
I know.
and whether you're rich or poor, sometimes you speed, and, you know, maybe not intentionally, and if it compounds your financial problems exponentially, then next thing you know, we've got other things going on, so.
Except that fine doesn't kick in until they're going 11 mile an hour over the speed limit.
I know,
So
but we
my
collect a
my
lot
sympathy
of money
level
how much
goes,
money do we collect
goes
every year?
down when somebody's going 11 mile an hour over the speed limit.
Yeah.
So, right.
Will this require when GATSCO sends the original paperwork to the violator, now are they gonna have to somehow try to explain what the process is and try not to confuse the recipient as much as we seem to be questioning it now?
Well, the documents that are mailed out already explain what their rights are, what their options are, and how to go about doing it. The notice will be modified to mirror the ordinance and what their options are. And how to either pay it, how to contest it, or what happens if you just all out ignore it.
Okay, so
It'll spell out what the.
if they ignore it, it's gonna say, this is what happens if you ignore it. It's gonna go to court system, yeah.
Correct.
Our current letters will have to be updated and revised, or theirs.
Anyone else?
Some people will probably, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Some people will probably interpret this out there that somehow the city is increasing the fine system, is gonna just really be pocketing money.
Right, because that's
We-
what
That
it looks
is-
like, and I have that concern,
That's
but,
gonna be the
True.
perception.
And I guess, let's address that one more time. I guess we believe we're very conservative with this fine structure. We believe that based on staff time, et cetera, that we'll actually see a decrease in revenue based on this fine structure, but we don't really know. So we may be back to you at some point in time in the future, or after, depending on the legislative session, we maybe have to come back to you at some point in the future, but we expect at this point in time probably to see a decrease in revenue, not an increase in revenue. But we'll want to monitor that, and we thought this was the fairest way to start by mirroring the current fine structure.
Yeah, I understand his concern, because the way it's worded, if you
Right.
stop reading at the top, it looks like
Right.
we're doubling the fine, and I definitely don't want people to think we're doubling the fines.
We can bold it and underline it
I
or
know.
something, or do something, I don't,
Right.
to make it stick out, but.
And it does use the word increase in a couple of spots in
Well,
the
and-
documents.
Yeah, and
Right.
I understand it's because the courts changed the structure
Sure.
of how how that works, and that,
And
legal
and-
speak sometimes gets real confusing.
And we
so.
have to, Phil was right on, we have to include the higher fine
Right.
as the base fee,
Yeah, it's like when
otherwise it
you-
will not be enforced.
Right, so it's like when you look on the back of the door at the hotel room, and the stated fees are extremely high. That's not what you paid when you
Right.
went in the door. Maybe people think about it that way.
Thank you, Phil.
Except we're putting them up front, not on the back of the door.
There you go.
Right.
Thank you. Well, hearing nothing else, we'll finish out the night with some comments. Councilman Harvey, did you have anything tonight?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Councilman Brackett?
I had a couple of things. Do we have an update on 500 Mulberry and what their status is?
I know,
Did they finish all the asbestos inspections and all that? And
the asbestos came back, there's not very much asbestos, so whether we do it or the contractor does it, it's very minimal. Dave had a draft contract, playing tag with the attorney last I heard, but I'll get you an update
Okay.
from Dave. Yep.
Then I still haven't gotten any information that I requested last week about the swap info.
Jim was on vacation, I think Brian mentioned that last week, and I will,
He's been out working this week, though. I saw him.
I'll remind him to
Okay.
put a memo together.
I'd
on
like that
swap.
as soon as possible. Then the other thing, I had asked to have a discussion on the agenda tonight about the surfacing issues at Curry's Transportation, and that didn't make the agenda. I just wanted to bring that up because I think we do need to talk about that at some point.
I'd sent out an email on response on that regarding the legal issues.
Okay.
And why not on the agenda. I had responded to that.
I'll have to go back and look
Yep.
for that. It might have got
As a
mixed in with the
legal-
other replies,
Right.
so. But,
As a
okay.
legal matter, as the attorneys were involved, or had been involved for some time now. So,
Okay. The other thing too, then, I would like to look at making the traffic committee at some point, make the recommendation that we make the traffic committee an actual committee where we have published minutes and agendas. And that's all I've got tonight.
Okay. Councilwoman Brockert?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Councilman Spread?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Councilman Salcedo?
Just a quick question. Are we on track with Second Street? Do you know what the date is potentially of opening that up? Is everything on schedule with the rain, or have we got delayed, or maybe if we can get an update, maybe from Jim or somebody?
No, I'll get you an update. I know Jim's been out. I have not heard of a delay. Jim, and Kevin
Tentatively,
has
we
not
were-
put out an update.
Tentatively, it was supposed to be
on
the
the
end
air
of November, and I just want to know if we're still on schedule to meet that to where we can eventually open up Second Street again.
I have it.
That's all I have.
Okay. Councilman Fitzgerald?
Nothing at this time, Your Honor.
Staff?
The four of us in attendance at tonight's goal-setting session as recommended next Thursday at 5:30, if that would work for everyone, to try and hold it at that point in time.
I do have a solid waste committee meeting at 5. I can talk to Dave Pop and see if You can move that up a little bit, so I could do both, or do you think we could make it be 6 o'clock for goal setting?
It's before council meeting, I guess that's how much time you need. Sure.
I think that'd be a little close.
You think it'd be too close?
Kinda tight.
Very tight.
How about 5:45?
We're negotiating now.
Make it a 5:40.
I'll talk to,
Well, let's start with, can everybody make it? There were 3 of us here tonight,
Right.
and, you know, we didn't have a quorum. So is this amenable to everybody to even be here next Thursday?
yeah.
I can be here.
I just plain forgot.
I had emailed and said I couldn't make it, so I'd already told
Yes,
them
yes,
I
yes.
wasn't gonna make
We
it,
all
so-
have our excuses.
I was here.
I wasn't.
What almost caught me is that the agenda was on the website, and then it wasn't on the website.
Well, that's how I
I
saw it,
wasn't sure,
yeah.
is there a meeting or isn't there a meeting? You know,
That was
so.
because, I didn't know how to make it so that when you clicked on the notify me, because when I put that agenda up, if you clicked on the notify me, it would send you to that one, which is what happened with Santos.
Okay.
That's why I was
And I
like,
just unpublished it so that the actual tonight's agenda would show up.
So we're gonna try 5:30 or 5:45?
5:45.
5:45.
Because I was at Hy-Vee.
I was at Hy-Vee as well. I saw you there, so I thought, well, I must not be missing anything.
Well, you were wrong.
Yes, I was.
I'll, I typically hand those out, I'll email those out, and maybe that'll give us a little bit of a head start as well. I have this year's, a draft and a track changes version I'll send out.
Okay.
Put it in a memo separate from your weekly update.
Yes, yes. It was in the last 4 weekly
Probably.
updates.
Yeah. Just didn't get my calendar. Didn't
That's
get to
all.
it.
And I just have a couple things tonight. Our city guests this coming week are Charla Schaefer with the Community Foundation and Jason Miller with Special Olympics. A reminder that Veterans Day is Sunday. Thank you to all of our military and our veterans. It's also the 100th year anniversary of Armistice Day, the very last day of World War I. So lots to celebrate, and to that end, the Symphony Orchestra is going to be having a concert on Saturday at 7:30. It's all a military theme. It looks to be awesome. Tickets are on sale at Hy-Vee for that. Military in uniform get in free. And because of Veterans Day, City Hall is closed on Monday. And also this weekend, November 9th through 11th, is the Muscatine Independent Film Festival. So if you haven't seen the schedule on that, I know it's out on social media and a couple of other places. You should be able to find it easy enough if you look. That is all that I have for tonight. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned. Nadine, you should have.